Hey guys, this is Kaijin Okami. I need your help. I'm chained up in this place full of stuff.
Sit down. Sit down.
Honey.
Oh
Sit
crap.
down.
They're here. Never mind. I'm good. Everything's fine. No problems here. Everything's good. How are you doing? Have a good day.
What were you doing?
Nothing.
I think he's trying to escape.
Escape or escape?
I think it's column A and column B because it's you.
Yeah, no, everything's good. Everything's fine. No problems. We're all good here.
You are aware you live here.
And she's been feeding you the last week.
Yeah, I feed you. It's not like you sit there and waste away.
Not the point.
You eat more cookies and candies. You have decimated all of the skeleton peanut butter cups I made you, and they're like 5 peanut butter cups in one.
That was like 4 days ago. And I
Okay.
haven't decimated them fully.
He lives on chocolate. We know this.
He basically lives on a college lifestyle.
I don't.
Except with fruit included.
Except I have fruit all the time, and mushrooms, and shrimp, and...
Okay, nevertheless, Mr. Victimized, do
I
you
am
want
very
to?
victimized.
Do you want to just like kind of quiet it down for a moment?
No, I just want to go.
Well, you're not going. Sit. Utsoi! Well, with that incredibly long delay, welcome to our newest podcast. I'm Cruellica Kain.
And I'm Advent Nebula.
And for this next podcast, as we segued from our last, we're going to be talking about our favorite genre, horror, but in anime form.
This one's not going to be as we did last time where we're talking about specific genres. We're just going to be going into a series that are horror-esque that we enjoy or we've watched recently because COVID has made me go, okay, I need something to take my mind off this. I've ended up delving into some series I originally had on the back burner that were streaming and went, okay, I'll get into this and go, okay, that's going on the list eventually buying.
Or series that we have watched like dozens of times in the horror realm.
Boogiepop Phantom.
Wow, that actually seemed perfect like for like how they do it in the show too.
Yep.
Boogiepop Phantom.
Boogiepop Phantom.
Except you don't sound as hollow. So that's a great segue. So do you want to talk about your favorite horror anime of all time?
Yes, Boogiepop Phantom.
I don't think the audience got that. What is it again?
Boogiepop Phantom!
All right.
And then Boogiepop and others anime. And, well, first we'll just talk about Boogiepop, then I'll give the other one I like.
Oh my god, just talk about it all because it's all Boogiepop.
Yep.
No?
Okay, nevertheless, Boogiepop Phantom. Why do you love this series so much?
Because it's fun. It's
Wow,
gruesome.
that was like anticlimactic. You going on and on. Boogiepop Phantom. Why do you like it? Because it's fun.
It's suspenseful.
Wow.
It's atmospheric. I love how the thing looks like it was filmed on cheap grain stock because of how grainy it all looks, and because it looks like an 80s horror movie the way it's animated.
I think one of the other really fascinating things about this is this series is not an incredibly long series.
Well, there's that, and it's not told in order.
No, it's not told in order. It almost feels like all of the stories interconnect with each other. Because you love Boogiepop as well.
Oh yeah, I enjoy it as well. I ended up reading the light novels before they actually started coming over here because thank you, fan translators.
But I, like, the first episode we watched was the one with the creepy kid, who he worked at the restaurant, and he hired a girl and started to make her dress like his virtual girlfriend. And then he starts freaking out at the end of the episode, and you see him, he's surrounded by cops, foaming at the mouth, and you see these cute characters in the background just walking. You're like, why is the camera focusing on those characters? And then when we backtracked to the beginning of the series, and episode 3 was on the girl that you saw walking in the background,
Mm-hmm.
and when she was walking in one scene, you saw the kid being surrounded by the cops in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh shit, this is pretty cool because they're connected, but they're two different stories. And it just had all great stories. And the one thing that I got into an argument with about with someone is someone said you have to watch Boogiepop and Others, the at least the first story to understand Phantom. And I'm like, I saw Phantom well before I saw any adaptation of Boogiepop and Others, and I understood Phantom just fine.
It's all about the personal perspective.
Yeah.
Because I will say that Boogiepop and Others did help
It does
answer
help.
questions, because there were many things that, not that there was anything truly confusing, but there were certain things in Boogiepop Phantom that were left slightly unanswered, that once you got to Boogiepop and Others, even though it was like nearly 20 years later,
Well, the movie adaptation.
yeah, you at least got it, and you're like, oh, okay, that now
I think
it
the
makes
only
sense.
thing that wasn't fully explained was the Manticore in Boogiepop Phantom. And Spooky E, when he showed up in one scene in Phantom. But other than that, everything I felt was self-explanatory without being fully self-explanatory.
So one of my favorite horror animes, which I'll plan on picking up soon, is Paranoia Agent.
Satoshi Kon's a genius.
I love this particular series because, one, you have a slasher movie villain in Lil Slugger. And it's so Japanese. But it's done so American at the same time.
And then the second half of the show, which turns into just a psychological mindfuck.
Well, exactly, because it plays... So, Paranoia Agent, what I like about it is Kaiju enjoyed it but didn't enjoy it.
I think what hurt it though is watching it on Cartoon Network week by week with commercial breaks.
Yes. I feel watching it in one long run, like binging it, definitely helps. Because it starts off as a psychological slasher film. With how it weaves the narrative together. And then it continues forward, adding elements of mystery, adding elements of Cronenberg-isms.
Yep. And then the highlight of the series is probably episode 8 with Happy Family Planning.
Oh.
With 3 strangers who want to become a family together and commit suicide at the suicide forest.
Yeah, once again, Japan. But Paranoia Agent, and it came out in like the early 2000s.
It was the second to last work. Satoshi Kon died before he passed from that brain aneurysm.
And so it came out at a time where, yes,
Wait, was that the Perfect Blue guy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he did Paranoia Agent.
Yeah.
I did not know that was his song.
Yeah, it's very similar art style too. Because if you look at the art styles for both of them, it's very similar. But I think that's one thing I really enjoyed about that particular series is it plays with you, and you have such a charismatic looking villain of Lil Slugger, because you're like, this little kid? And I think that's why I enjoy Trick or Treat on the live action spectrum, because it meshes with that so well.
So for me, I'm going to go with what's considered the Groundhog's Day of anime. Take a small town in 1983 and then have it repeat the same story with constant deaths over and over again. And I ended up, when I first was watching this, everybody was going back on the internet chat rooms I was at. I was like, download the fan sub of the first 5 episodes of this series.
Is this When They Cry?
Yes! Higurashi no Nakukoroni, When They Cry. Which... I still watch this series constantly.
Oh, I love Higurashi.
Because I've only seen the first arc, so it's more like Groundhog's Day.
Oh my god, yes!
Is that why I've always seen the same characters over and over?
Yes.
Oh my god. We have to watch that movie with that series with you. And we'll have to watch it in Japanese just so you have a consistent voice cast.
Especially with the
Third
new season, which is the 3rd season being a sequel that just came out with the
I thought it'd
dub.
be the 4th
Well, it's
season.
the 4th.
Yeah. The 3rd, what's called the 3rd season is a spin-off.
I know,
yeah.
but...
Hold on a minute.
Because we have Higurashi When They
Yep.
Cry, but it's such...
That's Wolf Girl and...
Yeah.
Okay. So that's season 1.
Yep.
This is season 2,
And they
this
call
is
that season 3 when it's technically
Yes.
a spin-off.
Yes.
But it's... Okay, that doesn't make sense, because this is supposed to complete the story. Or at least was at the time.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
But Higurashi, or When They Cry, because you'll hear it by both. Oh my god, because you got me into this series because I really didn't have an interest for it at the start.
ended up deciding to show you the clip of the opening of episode 5.
Oh my god! And when I watched this, because I've watched the first 2 seasons multiple times. I still have to watch the third. But oh my god, it does slasher, it does horror, it does supernatural, but it really is Groundhog's Day. Because, and then when you find out the twists
Of who the villain is and what's going
the
on.
other thing that also throws me off, though, is...
Yeah, there's fan service as well.
But because they're children, that's what it's kind
you
of...
you have to let go of it, because even the fan servicey elements, because
The fan service is mainly focused on the 17-year-old
Yes.
Yakuza twins.
I know, but
They're still kids.
But there's a lot of twists.
Yeah.
There's a lot of turns. And every time you think you have this story solved, it's almost like Excel Saga. Reset the world.
And we thought after the ending of the show, it'd be done. And now the new series has aired its first 2 episodes, which is based on the novels called Higurashi Next, which aren't adapted into light novel games. They are straight light novels themselves. It's another reset on this going on again. It's now the 100th loop.
And yes, so it is a continuous loop. And it's not a perfect continuous loop. Because there's something that happens at the end of the first season leading into the second that you're like, wait, what? Wait, no, you can't do that.
And then when you end up in the second season with episode 12, because 13 through 24 is one arc.
Mm-hmm.
When you find the twist of who's behind everything, you're like, can they actually break this loop, is the question you get asked.
Oh yes. It's a fantastic horror anime that I truthfully recommend for anyone, because yes, there's gore-ish elements to it, but there's so much psychological. It's like butter.
Yeah. For example, there's an arc where people start clawing their necks out with their fingernails because of the madness that's going on. And when you find out what causes the madness, each loop that start each loop.
And then you have a monster that's almost like Greek mythology.
And then you have a yokai that's actually trying to stop the loop.
Yep.
Well, the yokai's probably getting sick of being stuck in the loop. He's probably like, come on, man, what the hell?
So
I'm just trying to scare someone here, and you just are, like, keeping me resetting all the time?
So what's another horror anime for you?
The greatest OVA series ever.
Okay. Bastard?
Les Portraits des Petites Cosettes.
I was expecting you to say Bastard, because I love Bastard.
Now that has no ending.
It never will at this point.
It never even got to the arc when he becomes the devil.
Well, the manga will never have an ending, but nevertheless, Les Petits...
Les Portraits du Petit Cossette. Des Petit Cossette. Des, not du. Des.
I didn't say do.
No, I started to say do and say des. Les Portraits des Petit Cossette.
Which means...
The Portrait of Little Cossette.
Thank you.
And
Obviously, it seemed pretty clear, but I just figured.
I like this one for the psychological factor like he does, but the music is what sells
that's
us.
what I was going to say. First of all, you do have the psychological aspect. Not to
And
mention
supernatural aspect.
the haunting aspects. The animation is gorgeous. Like, the way they do the reflection, the glasses, is incredible. The music is frickin' phenomenal. I think it is Yuki Kajira's best soundtrack, period. Even though I love her music in Noir and Dot Hack, the Cassette is her best all around.
I'll say Madoka Magica, but that's my opinion.
I haven't seen Madoka Magica yet.
Wow, I'm gonna have a measuring contest between anime.
But there's that, and both the English dub and the Japanese tracks are nearly flawless. You can't go wrong in either language with this
Johnny
one.
Youngbosch sells it as the protagonist.
And the girl who does Cassette in both do an amazing job. And the whole story just keeps you wondering, like, you're trying to figure out the first time you're watching, like, what the hell is going on?
See, to be fair, when we first watched Cassette, I thought it was pretentious as hell. I did not enjoy it the first time we watched it. And then when we watched it again, and I didn't have to listen to her fanboying while we watched it, I was like, okay, I get it now. It's a good thing. But it just felt so pretentious the first. But then again, Pet Shop of Horror is the same way.
That's why I was looking at you right now with this. Like, you enjoy Pet Shop of Horror.
I'm not saying I don't like pretentiousness, but
Speaking of which, who did I get to sign this?
I don't know.
Whose autograph?
That's John Young Bosch's.
That's Bosch's
Yep.
for Cussett? Okay, cool. I just thought of like, hey, wait, I have a signature on my poster for Cussett. Because I love bringing that. I wish we'd meet more voice actors from this because they'd be like, oh my god.
Somebody remembers me doing this.
So, another one that I love, and I have loved this series. Obviously, I was not alive when they originally started, but I've loved it every time I've watched it. I've owned multiple figures of the main character. I've even watched the redone version, which I have complaints about, but it was still good. Devilman.
Go Nagai is the master of Japanese horror.
Oh my god, Go Nagai.
I'm just thinking of the Rob Zombie song now, Devilman.
But Go Nagai he hit it out of the park, especially starting in the early days of manga, moving into the early days of anime with Devilman. Because really, at that point in time in Japan, you really didn't have stories like that were very Christian oriented, because it was very focused on heaven and hell. And having a character that literally is an embodiment of the devil, or of a devil, being the hero, and then having an angel be the main villain. Obviously, the angel is not necessarily who you think it would be, but there's so much to it, and it's had so many adaptations, so many versions, both live action, animated. I have loved Devilman. I think the first time I watched anything of Devilman, it was the 80s OVA series.
With the cheesy UK dub.
Not saying it was the greatest, but I still loved it. And then I watched the original anime, because once again, I love Go Nagai. And then when watching Devilman Crybaby, you could tell that the person who was working on that loved Devilman.
And he loved the original art style Go Nagai had as well.
Absolutely. So it worked. And I'm not saying that like everything Devilman is great, because I'm not a huge fan of Devilman Lady.
And I enjoy that one.
It's a great series.
Yeah.
I'm just not the biggest fan. And I can say that I've never really enjoyed all of the live action adaptations.
I don't talk about those.
Exactly. But I don't know if you're really a fan of Devilman. Are you, Kaiju?
I've never watched it.
Oh my god, we have to educate you. You heathen.
I've never had an interest in it. I don't know, I just don't like Go Nagai's art style.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, that's to be fair, because I'm a fan of I can't say anything.
Yeah, I would like to see Mazinger Z, but I'm not really a big fan of his art style. I don't know what it is.
Well, because it's a very similar art style, obviously, to like Astro Boy, and because it was done in that 50s, 60s art style.
Yep.
Because of the time. So I can understand that, but I'm the same way when it comes to like Fooly Cooley, because I hate that art style. But the story itself, if you just focus on the story and ignore some of the elements of the art, in my opinion, it's perfection.
I don't like the art style of the guys that do Kill la Kill and that stuff.
Trigger.
Yeah,
Studio Trigger.
I don't really like their art style either.
I will agree, there are certain elements of their art style that did start to throw me off, but the story... But nevertheless, because we want to focus on horror, what would be your next?
So I'm going with something. I watched an Amazon Prime in March, and from the title, you would not assume this was a horror show. Let me just give you the premise. A high school girl kidnaps an elementary school girl to raise her as her daughter. Her aunt is clinically insane and traps them in the house to be boyfriends.
School Days?
This is called Happy Sugar Life.
Okay.
Which...
I like how your first thing is like School Days? No, that's another screwed up
Yeah.
horror movie.
No, Happy Sugar Life. And I was like, okay, this premise, because I was looking at some new horror stuff to watch that I had kind of fallen out of the loop with on anime. I'm like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Most screwed up main character I think I've seen since Marai Niki's with Yuna. And it delves into some topics you're like, okay, I didn't think I'd ever see that in an anime. And it doesn't fully adapt the manga, and it ends up leaving off with a pretty conclusive ending where the manga kept going from, I guess, the point where episode 10 ends off, but I'm going to have to pick up the manga after finishing this because it is that screwed up, but that enjoyable of a psychological horror. The ant is probably the craziest character in the entire show.
I have to say, every time you have mentioned this series, I'm like, I don't have Amazon Prime, but I'm going to find a way. I'll find a way. So I want to watch this particular series because it sounds perfect.
What do you mean we don't have Amazon Prime? We just got a 30-day trial.
Yeah, I have to watch it then.
Yeah, it's only 12 episodes.
Oh,
You can get through it in a couple of days.
So what would be your next horror anime?
Well, okay, this one is weird because
You're weird.
you wouldn't actually think of it as horror, but because the way the anime was done compared to the manga, but it technically is horror. Yugioh.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's horror.
Yeah, it technically is, but because
I
the
know.
way the anime was done with the card game, most people look at it as a shonen card anime instead of a horror series.
Well, we got into this exact conversation about JoJo's.
Yeah.
Technically, the first 2 parts are horror. So, I agree. I think there are a lot
but
of
because
horror elements.
it's very supernatural, because even the fact, even with the cards themselves,
All the cards are dead bodies!
all the cards
Yeah.
are monster spirits trapped in card form.
The black magician is a dead body!
Well,
Yep.
yeah, technically Maho is.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, and then you got ghosts, because Bakura is a ghost, and the spirits that inhabit all the Millennium items. And even, like, the early part of the manga was all horror-based.
It was basically Saw the game, and then they had a children's show.
Oh my god, I never thought of that.
Yeah, so...
It's like Saw for children.
But everyone, because of what became of Yu-Gi-Oh! As the anime went on, no one thinks of it as horror, especially years after we had GX, 5Ds, and all that stuff.
Well, if you think about the last arc in and of itself, it's very horror.
Well, ancient Egypt, especially when you have Bakura killing different beings because his ghost and everything. But yeah, it's not something people think of when they think of horror anime, and I keep forgetting that we should put it in your horror anime panel because
it is.
It gets overlooked.
Well, I completely forgot about Paranoia Agent for our panel, and I'm like, damn it, I love this series.
That's just because there were so many.
There's so many horror anime
Well, and
series.
when we redo this horror panel, we are going to swap some stuff out.
Oh,
'Cause-
absolutely. We have a lot to swap out.
Well, yeah, especially if we're going to have it in the same audience. That's assuming we ever get to do panels again.
Well, because who knows if there'll ever be a convention again. Nevertheless, my next favorite is... Obviously, it's not hard to call it horror because it literally is horror. It's just a matter of how much murder you like all at one time. And that's mainly because this particular series, I binged it in one evening, and the next weekend...
Danganronpa.
I begged you, can we go to GameStop so I can buy this game to literally play the same story I just watched? And then the moment the anime came out in America, I'm like, honey, you need to watch this, because I had already watched it again and again and again. Yes, Danganronpa. And this is the entirety of the series.
Both the animes and the light novels.
Oh,
and
and the video games.
And the think. The finale did not even become a video game, it was its own anime series.
And the amazing thing about Danganronpa is it takes, for me, the old school theory of slasher and supernatural and includes another genre I love in this world outside of anything, and that's murder mysteries. I love murder mysteries. You put me on to Investigation Discovery, I will watch it for 50 hours.
And what I love about the game so much is the whodunit factor of when you lock these people into a desperate situation.
When you go into a very desperate situation, you are literally going through an entire story of, like, how do you solve this crime? It's basically, the video game is like Phoenix Wright, but with murder. The anime takes it to a new level because you get to see an ongoing thing with it, and it's so psychological.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel for these kids because you're like, really? They're being put into this situation just because they exist?
And just because one person is extremely fucking nuts?
Oh yeah, Marcus's favorite character in the world. Well, one of his favorite characters in the Danganronpa universe. Because he loves the detective, and he loves the psychopath.
Not the point. That's like all kinds of damn.
What's your favorite next series that you like?
So I'm going over one that's both cyberpunk, psychological, and
Psychopaths.
horror. Yes.
Cool, you just saved me. Because I was debating what to do for next, if I was going to do that or something else.
But yes, psychopaths, because Makishima is the epitome of the...
He's the epitome of what he just said. That's a whole lot of damn.
Yeah. For somebody that's able to just manipulate people to his will to do some of the most fucked up shit.
Well, when you are so insane, their system to decide your insanity cannot register you as insane.
It says, no, you are a sane individual in this world where a computer dictates if you're insane or a perfect citizen. He's a model citizen by the computer standards.
I still remember when we first watched this series. We get to episode, I think it's like 5, where Makishima appears. It's like early on in the series. And he appears doing all of this stuff to Akane. And I think...
Are you talking about with the friend?
Yes.
That's 11.
It's 11?
That's the halfway point.
Wow.
That's the last episode in volume 1.
But nevertheless, when we get to that point in the series, I think all of us, including Silverquill, was like, okay...
I don't know if Silvercrow's seen them all.
I think he's seen the first season.
He's just seen the first season.
Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't seen the second season.
Because I know he didn't watch it with us.
No, but I know he's watched it. But I know all of us were like, alright, this is it. This is the modern horror anime that we just love.
Yes. And it's one of those shows that still holds up for its first season and its movie. Its second season is alright, and its most recent season that... I think if there was some way to watch the movies that take place between the movie that wrapped up the first 2 seasons and the start of the third season actually had a translation that I could find, it might make more sense on the third season.
I absolutely agree. What's another series for you, my love?
Okay, well...
I'm surprised nobody has chosen the most obvious one.
Well, the one I'm thinking of, I'm going with it because he might be one of my favorite anime characters of all time.
Oh, wow. No,
But I prefer... but the movie is nothing like the book, but because of how good the animation is and how amazing the music is, Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust.
Okay, I was waiting to see if anybody would mention Vampire Hunter D. I'm like, that's the most obvious.
The movie, well, at least the English dub version, which it sucks because no one will release it in Japanese in America, and from what I hear, the Japanese dialogue is more accurate to the novel, whereas the American...
Doesn't the one we have the Japanese
We
dialogue?
don't anymore.
Yeah, they've never, even the most recent Blu-ray release in America is dub only because Japanese are asking an absorbent amount of money for their track because it was... released in America first with an English dub. It came out in Japan 2 years later.
But the dub is not even remotely accurate. Like,
well, I've read the book and I've read the manga too.
Even though the voice acting is phenomenal, it's not even remotely accurate to the actual dialogue because in the book, or in the Japanese version in the book, they don't mention the nobles at all. Whereas in the Japanese version, because like in the book, they talk about the nobles.
Yeah. Which I prefer the light novel series, which just released, get this, 39th volume of Vampire Hunter D just came out in Japan this year.
We have like what, 16?
17.
Oh, 17.
If of all the, I wish they would would go back to doing the manga because they stopped after 5 volumes. But I love Bloodlust. The music, like when he's going through the sand place with the sand manta rays, that music is so good. And then when it transitions to when he's having his chase scene with Meyer Ling, which they call Meyer Link, but it's supposed to be Meyer Ling. But yeah, that whole thing is so different because Carmilla is not actually in the book. She was made up for the movie.
Well, thinking of another series that kind of similar to your argument with Yugioh, that's technically horror, but I think it's a little bit more on the spectrum of horror than Yu-Gi-Oh, is Yu Yu Hakusho. Because you're literally dealing, and it's a shonen series, and I think this is the one challenge with a lot of shonen series, because Black Butler is very similar to that. Black Butler is very horror.
Well, the problem with like Yu Hakusho and Yu-Gi-Oh and even One Piece has to deal with it is because it's shonen, they have strict requirements for what has to be featured in the manga.
But I think that's where the anime takes it a little bit more, because it's basically demons from hell fighting against each other.
You have an entire tournament in hell.
Yeah.
Which, I love that too.
Who's gonna rule hell? Let's find out.
But no, I love Yu Yu Hakusho because it took something very simplistic of bullies and that, like...
It was basically the 90s delinquent kids.
Yes, that's perfect example for it. And I love Yusuke, I love Kuwabara, so those helped, as well as Hiei and Kuruma.
Actually, that could be, instead of... Because even though in the horror panel you have like slides for each type of genre, you could also do a slide, though, series you would not normally think of as horror, and that's where you could put Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu Yu Hakusho.
Oh, that's a good way.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. But I love that, and I know I've talked about it in so many panels before, or so many podcasts before, that horror blurs the line. And other series blur the line into horror as well. And these are some great series that really do that. And I really love the storytelling, and, well, the manga writer for it is just phenomenal, so I can't argue.
So when you said that you were expecting like someone to pick a character, I thought you were referring to Hellsing.
Oh no, that's on my list too, but I'll get
So how many are we doing for this?
We'll
list?
do as many as we get bored.
Yeah.
I guess that's a terrible way of saying it. We're not going to get bored. We love you.
I'm bored. Can we quit?
No.
Nope. So I'm going to go with a series that's probably the best psychological series, and I'm more familiar with the manga than the anime on this one, but the anime is just as good. Be fair, if you go in the anime, it's 74 episodes.
That's it?
That's it.
I've got One Piece, so yeah, that seems like chump change.
Yeah, but we're talking about horror anime here, and some people are going, you might know what it is, and others are probably going, well, how can you have a horror anime that's a serious horror anime go on for 74 episodes? Well, Monster actually goes into a very psychological aspect, and Johann Lieber is like Makishima, one of those characters that doesn't get their hands dirty that often, but in the case of Johann, he actually doesn't get his hands dirty except for once in the entire run of the show. And he's one of those characters that literally can have you kill yourself with just his words.
He is the perfect example of a puppet master.
Yeah. He'll do whatever it takes to keep himself from getting caught. And at the same time, he keeps manipulating the surgeon that saved his life as a young boy. Because the whole point from the series start is, who's the real monster? Is it the doctor that saved the young boy that became Johann Lieber, the mastermind killer who makes you kill yourself? Or is it the doctor who saved Johann, not knowing that he was saving the literal incarnation of a human monster?
Well, every time I've looked at anything or watched anything for Monster, one example I've always taken from it as a real life experience, not personally but just in the world, is the Manson family.
Yeah.
Because Johann reminds me of a little bit more debonair version of Charles Manson. Because while Charles Manson technically did kill, I think, like 2 or 3 people, the rest of the body counts, he had no physical hand in committing those actions.
He manipulated people to do it, or he manipulated the victims to do it to themselves.
And so, not that either of them are right or anything like that. It's just a fascinating psychological perspective of how weak you can make somebody mentally by playing around with their minds, even if you're not physically touching them, to act.
Yeah, because the one scene we used in our panel, which is probably the best example of how Johan can use his words, he tears down a politician so bad the politician jumps off a building.
Yes. And it's insane. It's really insane. But that's what makes it brilliant.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's what makes it brilliant as a series. All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about, Mr. Escapee? I could tell you one. It's right there next to Rossifon.
You mean Speakerfur?
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about that one. Because Speakerfur, but actually this one also is another one that, and it's sad that it's out of print, Silent Mobius.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
One of the best sci-fi horror series that ever come out.
And then it never got, the ending was never animated in anime form, and the manga has never been fully released, completed in America.
Nope.
Except for Bookwalker now, if you want to go digitally, has the first release of it complete.
Yeah, he. But Silent Mobius,
especially with the twist that occurs halfway through the series with the main character, when... Do I say it? Do I not?
It's up to you.
It's up to you, because...
No, I want to keep it surprised, but it was amazing because it's like, I never saw that coming. But yeah, it's like these female cops fight demons from another dimension, and something happens to one of the characters later on, and that's like, holy shit, that's
it
bad.
It blurs the line of right and wrong.
Yeah.
For that particular series.
And the one thing I love about the author of Silent Mobius talks about how he worked on some of the early Shin Megami stuff when it was on the NES days of Shin Megami.
And then he did a Batman manga graphic novel that was interesting, but when they brought it to America, they flipped it. So everything looked like a mirror image.
So another series, well, I'll get that obvious one out of the way if I can do two, just because the obvious one is going to be Hellsing.
Yep.
All of us have seen Hellsing, both.
Actually, I've not seen anything past episode 4 of Ultimate. I've only read the manga.
Which still counts in a way.
Yeah, it still counts because you know how the story progresses.
I'm just saying, I still actually have yet to see the entire anime.
So we have the original series.
Which, in a way...
with Incognito as the main
There's only one episode I like the original. The one with the snuff film people.
Which was a very original take on that.
That episode, I don't know what it is, but the way it's edited and its music is, like, for me, the most entertaining episode of the original series.
Can I tell you what my favorite thing about Hellsing is? Hellsing Abridged.
Yeah.
No, I love Hellsing, don't get me wrong, but Hellsing Abridged has brought so much...
Storage Wars.
But it's... Hellsing... I will say I did enjoy the original anime for Hellsing, but...
It has not held up.
It has not held up. When you get to Hellsing Ultimate...
And Madhouse doing the animation is what helped, I think, Ultimate do so well.
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's gorgeous. And it's a great classic horror anime because it's about vampires versus the church.
Versus Nazis.
Versus George Lucas.
Versus the Nazis, versus everyone.
I heard Motley Crue.
Oh my god. But I love the series because I love vampire movies. So enjoying that has always been the thing.
The weird thing about Hellsing, though, is... Okay, so you've got, like, the first episode, the second episode, which, like, the first episode, then, like, a few weeks later, the events of the second episode, then you have, like, the events of the third episode, and then episodes 4 through 10 are all in the same night.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. My favorite character of the series, though, like, not a main character, just one of my favorite characters, is Rip Van Winkle.
Oh, Rip Van Winkle's probably one of my favorites as well.
I just don't get her.
That's the only thing, though, that was weird to me, is how the pacing was. That it was, like, the first 3 episodes were set over several times, and then all of a sudden, 4 through 10 are all one long night.
Just wait. Watch Drifters. The time of that series never makes sense But
the Drifters, you have Joan of Arc and the Holy Saints as the villains.
well, the main villain is somebody that we probably should never talk about.
Yeah.
You'll get crucified for it.
When you see the stigmata, you're like, holy shit, it's Jesus.
Yeah.
But, so the other series I really wanted to talk about, I just wanted to get Hellsing out of the way since everybody expects Hellsing,
Well, it's just like Attack on Titan. Everyone expects Attack on Titan.
is actually, truthfully for me, Tokyo Ghoul. I love the manga, but the first season, stop with the copyright stuff, but still, the first season of Tokyo Ghoul, anime-wise, oh my god, I fell in love with it because the manga's great. The manga has a great story. I love the characters. But Kaneki, I really think as a character he thrives in that animated form because you get to see him interact. And having a character that should never be an anime villain or hero be the anime villain and hero is just fascinating.
It is.
And then to have Jason as one of the villains of it, even though it's a little bit different, is so great.
Yeah, he's probably one of the more twisted takes you'll ever see.
Oh, yes. But I really enjoy it because it's a perfect example of a creature feature and slasher show at the same time. Because when you start the series, you're like, wait, zombies? But they exist in regular humanity? They're not like regular zombies? But you feel sympathetic for them at the same time because there's this one who's half human, half zombie, not like Kaneki, but a little bit different because they were born that way. Ooh, Lady Gaga. But nevertheless, you feel sympathy because she goes through such a traumatic experience.
Oh, that's probably the one character you feel the most sympathy for when reading the manga.
It's hard. It's very, very hard. And that's why I really like that series. Yes, the second season was not...
We don't talk about the second season. We go straight into the third.
Yes. We
with Reed.
We just go to
But
Reed.
doesn't that take place after the ending of the original?
No,
manga?
actually, you have to go... The first season and the manga, you just ignore the second season, just read the manga and go into Reed.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. You have to read the manga to get the real ending Tokyo Ghoul to really
Yes.
understand Reed,
Yep.
which kind of defies the point.
Not for fans. Fans have gotten over it.
Yeah.
But, alright, so let's...
I'm going to end mine with probably the best psychological horror film and probably one of my favorites. It's amazing this was Satoshi Kon's debut with Perfect Blue.
Yeah, which sucks that they lost the original negative, so they can
Yeah.
never do a proper remaster of it.
Yeah, the current remaster that Shout Factory has put out is using the DVD upscale because that's all they can really do with it now.
Yeah, which I still need to get that movie on Blu-ray, but I've watched that movie once, and I loved it.
It's the best way to describe it. It's
Hitchcock.
It's Hitchcock in modern day.
Oh my god.
It's the closest thing you can get to a modern day Hitchcock, especially when you actually get to everything going on. And it is a film that really can only be told through animation because of the mind trickery that's needed to do it.
Absolutely. There is no way this movie could be told properly and legitimately in live action because...
now with CGI they could do it.
Well, yeah, but you know how much CGI would
I know.
have to be into it? We basically should just have the Final Fantasy movie again.
Yeah.
Or The Lion King.
Ugh.
That's not live action.
I'm well aware. But I'm just saying, there's no way... Because Kites, if you want to go on that,
Ugh.
Kite was a poor example of putting a very psychological, very dramatic anime adaptation and turning into live action. There was no way you could do it. And
Yeah.
that's how Perfect Blue would be.
Yeah, Perfect Blue, you really... And it's one of those, you really appreciate the horror aspect on that if you are a fan of Hitchcock. And you're going to just go into this movie. If you've never seen it, you're going to have to go back after a few days and rewatch it again. And then things will start clicking. But then you're going to pick up on a lot of the things you didn't notice the first time that threw you for a loop. But every time you're going to rewatch it, you're going to pick up on something you didn't notice the first time.
And that's what I think is so great about that particular movie is it is one of those films that you can watch it 4 or 5 times and not get bored of it. It's not like, oh my god, this is just excessive. there's just so much that comes with it.
Yeah, and the twist on both of the villains as you go through the movie, you don't see either one coming. When you think you have it figured out, you really don't.
Well, that's exactly it, and I appreciate anything that's like that. Do you want to do one more? Or?
Yeah, I've got one more.
All right.
It's psychological, very psychological.
Okay.
And creature feature combined.
All right.
Take a guess.
I'm not even going to try. I have way too many anime series over
I
there.
have too many I know as well.
Well, okay, it's psychological because no one remembers anything that has happened, so no one just goes on their lives without any memories. It's creature feature because it has giant monsters in there and stuff from experiments gone wrong.
I'm almost thinking Rossifon, but I know
Nope,
it's not that.
Big O.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Because it's, even though it does teeter more on sci-fi, it's still got all the elements of horror in there. And it even rips off horror theme songs.
Well,
Like the Twilight Zone and Outer Limits.
oh
But
my
yeah,
god.
Big O is another one that most people don't think of as horror.
You really wouldn't because it's so sci-fi.
But when you think about it, like I said, it's psychological. It has monsters in it.
And nobody remembers a damn thing that happened.
It's atmospheric. It's suspenseful.
Well, speaking of a horror show that nobody ever remembers, Dance in the Vampire Bund.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
No, I understand. I'm just
Well,
saying-
there was that other one, Red Garden, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Red Garden, which I love that show.
Oh yeah.
And it's a unique take on the zombie genre because it's also a high school drama.
Wow.
Well,
I'm just happy no one said High School of the Dead.
well,
I
was
consider
just
that
gonna-
a comedy.
Well, I was actually going to say for my guilty pleasure horror anime, it was going to be High School of the Dead.
Yeah.
Where if I have to go with my guilty pleasure, it's definitely Future Diary.
But no, I do agree that High School of the Dead is more comedy, but
And it's overhyped.
But still, the best scene in anime history. We're gonna be friends forever.
Zombie.
Get off me, bitch! Yeah, that.
Where Future Diary. It's just so over the top that you understand it's not that great of a story, but you just can't stop watching.
Absolutely. So those are the guilty pleasures. But one thing that we tried to demonstrate within this is one, there's a lot of horror anime out there. And two, there's probably a lot of horror anime out there that you never thought about because there's Dead Man Wonderland. There are so many other series. There's Prison School, I think of as kind of horror anime. There's Corpse Princess, and all those. So there's a
School Live.
Berserk.
There's Murder Princess.
So there's so much out there that you can't go wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of horror comedy out there too, like Beelzebub.
Absolutely. Or you have Jigoku Shoujo, which plays around with you.
I forgot about that one.
So definitely enjoy anime
Damn
if
how
you
did I
love
not
it,
remember Jikoku
and
Shoujo?
then just go on and watch your favorite horror anime and let us know in the comments what you like. And if you think we're totally wrong,
Yeah.
let us know.
Now I'm going to unchain the kaiju and let him decide if he's going to stay, because we are ending this podcast for now, but we will be back with our take on Stephen King and the good, the bad, and the ugly of adaptations for him.
Which will be which will complete Pop Culture Therapy's Halloween month special.
Yes, I know. It's so fascinating. And why we're talking about Stephen King? He's had a lot going on these last couple years.
Especially with its remakes. And this Christmas, we're getting The Stand remade properly. Even though it's going to be on CBS All Access, but it's still going to be a proper adaptation.
Well, that's the hope.
No, Stephen King.
Yeah, but I have, after Twilight Zone, and from what I hear from the Star Trek series on that network, I don't have any faith in CBS All Access.
But if you're interested in hearing our thoughts on a lot of that's going on with Stephen King and that we've seen and enjoyed, check us out. Bye!